The field of agriculture does not end in the farms, but goes all the way into processing of the farm produce into finished goods ready for consumption. Over the years, Africa has been an exporter of raw materials to developed countries for processing. This has, among others, caused Africa to be vulnerable to fluctuations in global demand and prices, limited on economic growth, limited on employment opportunities, and depleted of natural resources without sufficient economic benefits. In response to these, various African countries have come up with strategies aimed at combating the vulnerability that comes with the exporting of raw materials, and in agriculture, the issue of agro-processing has taken the center stage in the discussions at various exchange programs within Southern Africa. And on this week's episode of Economic Forum, we will be highlighting some of these issues, focusing on Zimbabwe and Botswana. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Cynthia Shikaramba. It is good to have you along. Of great interest are the efforts being made by the young generation in being industrious and creating their own employment in line with Education 5.0. Tamiso and friends are great examples of such, having taken the lead in the production of peanut butter in Botswana. Here is their story.
I studied food science and technology at Botswana. When I finished my degree, I got the opportunity to work for it in product development and just worked in the food technologies department. That's where now I got the idea of actually starting my own production, as we see that in Botswana we have a lot of food imports. I joined hands with other two graduates also from Botswana, and we came up with a bit of money, bought our first equipment, and that's where we are here today. So we realized that food production in Botswana is not really there. So we decided, instead of, because a whole lot of our classmates were not employed, we're like, but we have all these skills and NAFTEC is here to try and equip Botswana with the skills to get into production. Why don't we lead the way, lead the pack, and then show people that it's possible? One of our biggest challenges has been cash flow. Also, again, because the equipment is very, very manual, so our production is limited. The other biggest challenge is raw material, the peanuts, where to get them, where to get good quality peanuts. Even with those challenges though, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, because we have recently been funded to expand our operations. So I believe now with the equipment that's going to come, it'll be semi-automated, which will actually make processes even easier and faster, maybe in that instance, increasing our capacity. When I decided to quit my job and venture into my business, it was not a fallback plan, it was like my plan A. So I was really passionate about this, and I think also it's what keeps me going even when the road gets tough, because I know where I want to see myself in future. So to the other youth, I would basically say, do something that you know you are passionate about, that you know even if when you are not reaping the rewards yet, you are enjoying the process, the learning process, and that will take you very far, because money is not going to come right away. You are going to have to put in the work to get somewhere.
Their facility has served as a center of inspiration to other youths, and their efforts were applauded by many.
It's not that common that you find young people who are willing to take responsibility for their livelihood. Young pretty girls like you look for blessers in certain instances. Yeah. But you have chosen a very honorable path. We can't thank you enough.
I respect people who trust groundnuts. It's a wonderful crop throughout the world. Yeah. And for being African in particular, groundnuts are not grown in Europe because of the weather. They'll never produce a kg of groundnuts. So we have a huge opportunity outside SADC, outside Africa. And it's nutrition. We always say food security and nutrition. This is nutrition at village level, because the technology to process it, though a bit old technology, but it's still there, right at homestead. So that's a plus. And this is now commercializing the crop. It's a serious industry. We as Africa, nutrition is critical. Yes, it was in the background, but we want it to be in the forefront. That's why in our government, they always say food security and nutrition.
It's fantastic to see something practical like this. This young lady is part of a group of 3 people who finished school and then went and did their tertiary. After tertiary, they got jobs when others were not getting jobs. But still, even with that mindset, she still thought, no, I don't want to do this. I want to go into the industry myself. It's fantastic. The entrepreneurial spirit is what we need in our economies. If we carry on doing things the way we've been doing them, we cannot expect a different outcome. The only way we get a different outcome is if we start doing things differently. And we need to start thinking like our counterparts do who are from overseas. They are always shaking the tree and looking for opportunities. And that's what I really, really admire. I genuinely mean that I really admire in what we've seen.
On that note, we take a short break. We will continue with agro-processing issues in the second segment. We are now in the second segment of Economic Forum, and we are looking at discussions on agro-processing which took place between Zimbabwe and Botswana farmers. In a bid to reduce imports of products that can be produced locally whilst retaining high value for the products, farmers are taking on the responsibility of value addition on various crops and improving their respective economies in the process. A product of interest is safflower crop and is helpful in treatment of numerous ailments, hence making it a high-value export product with a global demand.
We were doing vegetables before, and Buan, through Professor Imongo, they introduced to us this crop called safflower. As you see, these are the products. This is organically grown. Just your normal manure. It doesn't need insecticides or anything.
Safflower is a multi-purpose crop. So from this seed, you extract cooking oil. Now this oil is better than olive oil, the quality. So that's why the price is very expensive if you check in the world market. In the US, a liter of this oil is going for $35. You don't have to import cooking oil. Let's have good quality oil. This oil is very good for the heart. It's very high in polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fatty acids. It's not like these others. That's why olive oil is expensive, because of the fat acid composition in the oil. It's not like sunflower or maize or peanut butter oil, because the levels of saturated fatty acids is very high. But for safflower, between 90 to 92% of the fatty acid composition is either polysaturated or monounsaturated, which is very good for the heart. After you extract the oil, you remain with the cake. The cake actually has about between 20 to 24% protein. When you have this, you don't need lard. You can use it for animal feed. You can read, you look at Australia, Germany, what they use this for finishing the beef animals, the cake. It's also used for feeding dairy animals. It increases milk production. You can read more about it. So these are crops for Southern Africa, by the way. The areas where the rainfall is low. Before you harvest the seed, you know, it's going to flower. These are actually the flowers. You can harvest the flowers. These flowers are very good for medicinal purposes. You can go and read, China grows safflower majorly for extraction of drugs. This safflower has been known, it reduces blood pressure. What you're talking about is the petals. That's what most of the research has concentrated on. And most of the drugs that are used for BP, they are using safflower.
Speaking of high-value products, turmeric also tops the list, being key in various industries such as medical, beauty, and food, among others. Processing of the crop can be done on a very small scale, as demonstrated by one of the farmers.
Turmeric, it was a trial when we were doing it. We did turmeric. we did garlic, we did ginger. But the one that we stuck with was turmeric. So we learned how to deal with it. My wife, she's the one who does value addition.
I'm the processing plant, unfortunately at home for now, but the intention is to grow from that. So after you take it, it has to be just to be fresh, because otherwise if it becomes dry, that's how this is the color. It shows that the moisture is very, very low. So the brown skin becomes more dominant. You actually wash it first because it's got a lot of soil, and after that we put it in some hot water for a few minutes, though, just to remove some of the smell and just to make it to be stable. And then after that you cut it and then you dry it. Because it's done from home, we used my home machine, just a blender. Yeah, it does exactly what a big mill would do. Yes, it has that rotating thing, so that is what it does. After that, it becomes powder, but then we sift it a little bit so that if there's anything that is a toxin, it can actually be taken out. Turmeric market is the biggest market and is the growing market very much. It's one of those high value crops that are used in more than 4 different geographic markets, for the pharmaceutical, for the beauty industry, and for the culinary industry.
As the old adage goes, open quote, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, close quote. These small enterprises in agro-processing mark the beginning of much bigger processing industries with the potential to substitute imports, hence making the Southern Africa region self-sufficient on food. We take another short break. Join us in the third and final segment of Economic Forum. In today's episode and some of the previous episodes of Economic Forum, we highlighted agricultural exchange programs between Zimbabwe and Botswana, with the most recent being the visit by a Zimbabwe delegation to various agricultural sites in Botswana. After a week-long interactions, the Zimbabwe delegation, comprising the academia, the financial personnel, and farmers, benefited from these initiatives. Here are their lessons and recommendations.
What I learned over the week is that when it comes to on the farm production, government has put in place here in Botswana good policies to say basically we should stop importing a lot of the horticultural products from other countries. Let's produce them here. And what I learned is that there's been a lot of uptake, a lot of new farmers have come in to start producing, but they need a lot of information. I think the Ministry of Agriculture here is doing a good job. But these farmers are really, really hungry for knowledge, skills, technical training, and so forth. They are now looking at Zimbabwe with a little bit of different eyes and ears. In the past, they were not looking at Zimbabwe for any help in the area of agriculture, but now I can see them trying to get as much of those skills. With the enthusiasm, there's now need to grow those manufacturing plants to be able to supply the wholesales and the supermarkets.
I come from a background of agricultural research, and I've traveled around the globe assessing impacts of agricultural innovations. And I'm seeing Botswana and Botswana farmers and the communities and the stakeholders are quite keen and geared to see Botswana moving from one level of how they do things in terms of agriculture, particularly on the crop side. They've done very well in innovations in terms of the livestock sector, the beef sector, very, very successful to world standards. And they're now ramping up their business on the cropping side. There's a lot of exchanges that are going to be necessary in terms of training, capacity building, including their research. We visited the university. They're also quite an interesting perspective.
We observed quite a number of interesting development in terms of how the people of Botswana have changed or are changing their mindset to capitalizing on the government policy which is moving towards the food security and self-sustenance. We actually experienced the high levels of enthusiasm in terms of how the new farmers are raring to go to take advantage of that government policy, as well as also issues of value addition. The government is also encouraging value addition activities, following up the primary production on the farms, and this will cascade again downwards to exports. So we have a combination of reduction of imports and then increase in exports.
From the trip, we have demonstrated on how to plant organic garlic. There are still new farmers. There's still more to learn about agriculture. So we went to teach them how to do organic garlic, how to plant it, and other measures to be taken to prevent other diseases.
I've learned of a new crop which we don't have back home, but with lots of benefits. The crop is called safflower. From the safflower plant, you can have some very nutritious vegetables from there. You can also extract oil, which I understand is even more healthier than other type of oils which we have been using.
I set out on this mission or on this trip to see how other emerging farmers in Botswana were going about improving their farming operations. And this perhaps riding more on the clarion call from the two heads of state of Zimbabwe and Botswana to foster closer ties between our peoples with a view of developing our economies.
Ndakaitwa impressed the support iri kupiwa mafarmers kuti vakwanise kuita grow their own food. Government yakabva yastopa all my imports. Ndokutanga kukurudzira varimi vayo kuti varime zvokudya. Saka chinhu chakanaka kuti isu tinge tichirima zvinhu zvedu zvokudya, nekuti zvimwe zvinobva kunze hatizivi kuti zvakamira sei, uye kana taakutarisa nezveutano hwedu tinofanira kunga tichidya zvinhu zvakanaka zvinotipa utano.
We visited a number of farms. We saw their farming practices. We saw how they are doing their things. So we learned a lot from how they are doing their things. Though we need to possibly share notes in terms of water management.
We did learn a lot. From my part, ndikuda kuti as Zimbabweans, we start on a small scale in the village. We can create employment for ourselves. And this is important for a nation because our youth yakawanda iri complain kuti haina mabasa. Asi tikacreate basa tega as youth, as women, tinoona wana vachiregedza kuita madrugs.
During the farm visits, I noticed that the farmers here, they need support in the form of bore drilling, as they depend on rain-fed farming. And the other thing that I also noticed is that they need the right equipment when it comes to groundnut harvesting. And the other thing is that we as farmers, I think we need to be open-minded. If we look at the climate change is real. We need to be open-minded and start to consider venturing into small grains to ensure food security.
We have got to continue to cross-pollinate as two sister economies, taking full advantage of our geography. We are now cultivating a borderless mind because it's in our long-term interest. We now face a regional threat of food security and nutrition. We need maximum cooperation. What Zimbabwe can do, what Botswana can do, where do we meet? How can we add value? Because those are the now minimum positions. The days when we were shipping material, raw material out of Africa, I think are numbered. We need now to invite technology. Where we cannot invite it immediately, then we must deploy the raw material equity theory, which will benefit the two economies and indeed Africa.
This brings us to the end of this week's episode of Economic Forum. For your views and comments, do not hesitate to contact us on the details appearing on your screens. From me, Cynthia Jikaramba, and the crew behind the scenes, happy viewing.